All right, good morning and happy race day, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good March Madness tournament. I know my pick to win it all lost in the first round, so that has been a lot of fun. But nonetheless, we have NASCAR to make up for March Madness if your bracket is already busted. So we got the Cup Series at Atlanta. Atlanta, if you have not known, it's got repaved. This is the second time. I guess it's actually the third time that we've been to Atlanta since we do race here twice in the season. So Atlanta is basically now a mini super speedway race. So you basically have, Daytona and Talladega are its own, you know, kind of set of racing, and then Atlanta is kind of like a mini version of that. We're still going to see pack racing, except instead of being on a 2.5, 2.6 huge mile track, we have it on a 1.5 mile track. So these laps are going to click off very fast. We're still trying to understand really, what type of strategy, lineup construction approach that you want to take when you get to this slate. So we did see the Truck Series race and the Xfinity Series race yesterday. Both of those had a decent amount of wrecks. I would say the Xfinity Series definitely had more wrecks than the Truck Series, which, if I would have guessed, I probably would have guessed the opposite there. That Xfinity race was difficult at times to get through, just how long the caution flags were and how long it took them to just go back to green. So I'm really hoping that we don't get that type of race today. But if we do get that type of race, hopefully the type of strategy and implementation that we're going to talk about today is going to help us hopefully make money. So what I've seen so far is I think place differential is still really important when you get to these tracks. So, but for me, I'm really going to try to build my lineup and just focus on what are 6 drivers I can get into my lineup who all have the ability to finish inside the top 10. So I'm not really looking at those really back of the field back markers who start deep in the 30s because they might only be able to get up to like 25th, 28th. And that's still going to be a good day. But I think if you want to have a great day, you really got to get a little bit more aggressive, maybe trying to find drivers who start 10th through, 32nd or 10th through 30th. Like the drivers who are in good equipment, who have the ability to stay with the lead pack and actually finish inside the top 10. And those are the drivers I think we're going to want to try to focus on. So the other thing to keep in mind is we saw a lot of wrecks with some of these races last year and also this weekend. So we know some drivers are going to carry more ownership than others. So for us, let's just try to pivot off some of those high owned drivers or find what chalk plays you want to be aggressive on and what chalk plays you want to pivot off of and really just try to play that ownership game to get some leverage on the field. If we see a driver who's 35, 40, 45% owned wreck. Well, if you don't have that driver, that's a really good advantage and way to, potentially jump ahead of those lineups, assuming that that driver is one that wrecks. So if you're playing cash games today, I think the quote unquote stack the back lineup mentality is still the right approach to go. If you're playing GPPs, you're trying to get a big takedown, you're going after the tournaments, you got to be a little bit more aggressive than that. I think if you just stack the back, you might have a chance of cashing, and hey, maybe that's just your end goal. But if you want to actually win this tournament, you're going to have to get aggressive with some drivers who start a little bit more towards the front of the field. And what we've seen at this race last year, especially in the Cup Series and some of the races, this weekend, place differential, I would say, is still the main priority, but we're seeing that these Dominator points still matter too in these races. Not necessarily fast laps, just because fast laps are going to get distributed throughout the field just because everyone's drafting, but with how narrow and tight and how quickly these laps click off here, if you're one of those drivers who are at the front of the pack and you're just clocking off laps led, that's a lot of points up for grabs, especially if you don't wreck out. So if you can nail who those lap leaders are going to be and then have your place differential plays, avoid the wrecks and gain positive, place differential points at the end, I think that's the recipe for success. Trying to predict those Dominator points are going to be difficult, but nonetheless, we will jump into it and try to figure out, what types of plays we want to land on. So for me, It's really any driver who's, I would say, starting 10th through like 30th. Those are the drivers that I want to be really aggressive on. Those are the drivers I primarily want more of. Any driver inside the top 10, I'm not really getting to too much today, even though I think they might have a better chance of maybe getting those Dominator points. Even if a driver, leads 50 laps and then wrecks out, those Dominator points more or less are, they might do some damage control, but they're still going to hurt your line versus if you have a driver who starts 28th and he wrecks out and finishes, 30th. Like that's not going to be as bad of a day as a driver who starts 9th and finishes 30th. So for me, I just want to be a little bit safer. But again, trying to find those plays that have a ton of upside. So looking at the expensive range, you got Larson, Byron, Busch, Blaney, Logano, and Chastain. Favorite two plays are going to be Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain. Why? Well, let's look at the starting positions. Kyle Busch starts 17th, Ross Chastain starts 18th. These are two drivers who are in top tier equipment, who start mid-pack of the field, who give you me positive place differential points. Those are the plays, if any plays, in the top range I want to get to. William Byron would probably come in third place. Just like Austin Hill, William Byron has been on fire, so maybe he can keep that momentum up. Don't mind him at all, but a little bit more of a tournament play starting 11th. I don't really think I'm going to have any Kyle Larson today. I think people might go after Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano. We saw Penske basically dominate qualifying. They qualified 1 through 3. So it'll be interesting to see how these cars race when they're in a pack versus just single car qualifying. So I think their ownership might get boosted a little bit just because of how good they are in the super speedways. And if they are trying to chase those Dominator points, I would say Blaney and Logano are in a prime position to lead a bulk of this race. Denny Hamlin's trying to bounce back from his comments. He basically admitted that he wrecked Ross Chastain on purpose, and NASCAR, of course, gave him a fine. So he's been pretty tight-lipped this weekend. So he's just looking to have a solid race. Starts 14th. Gives you a lot of place differential upside. Should be a pretty popular play today as people look at super speedway, track history. Christopher Bell is going to start at the rear of the field today, but honestly, I don't think that matters too much. This race is pretty long. We're going to see the cautions. These teams are going to have a lot of chances to cycle back to the front. More of a GPP option. Not getting the Kevin Harvick just based on where he starts. Alex Bowman has been extremely consistent. He's just been a top 10 machine. Starts 15th. Don't mind him at all for cash games or tournaments. I would say he's probably a little bit more of a tournament play than a cash games play, but I don't mind either of those. Martin Truex Jr. is going to be a really popular play today. Super speedway racing is not really his forte. He does start 29th though, and he's in a JGR car, able to maintain, stay with the lead pack. The can advance his position 10 plus points, he's in for a good day. And if he has a bad day, starting 29th really isn't going to hurt you. So Truex would probably be a core play to build around. Just know he is going to be high owned. So if you are playing tournaments, maybe you try to pivot to the driver starting 28th or 30th or 27th. Try to just find a little bit of an edge. Just figure out what chalk plays you want to be on and what chalk plays you want to be off of, and just hope those chalk plays get caught up in those wrecks. Tyler Reddick has had an interesting start to the year, relatively inconsistent with some of his finishes. So he's really looking for a good race this weekend. Starts mid-pack. Don't mind him at all. Just kind of like some other drivers a little bit more. Keselowski starts a little bit too close to the front. Bubba Wallace, I'm going to be very interested in Bubba today. Bubba has really, over the last couple of seasons, has really developed himself into a great super speedway racer. Probably going to be a popular option, but again, it's another driver who gives me positive place differential points, who I can see finishing inside the top 10. Those are the boxes that I want to check today. He checks those boxes. Don't mind plugging him in. Briscoe starts a little bit too close to the front. Not going to get to him. Another core play I really like today is going to be Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez starts 25th. Trackhouse Chevy. Chevy has won all of the races so far this year. So, odds are maybe Chevy's going to make it 5 in a row. I don't know if that really helps Suarez, especially on this track, but he does start 25th, gives you positive place differential points, has the ability to finish inside the top 10. Really like building around Suarez. Austin Dillon is fine tournament play, starts 13th, probably going to be relatively low owned based off of his starting position. So he's an interesting tournament play just to get a little bit different. Really like Eric Jones as well. Eric Jones hasn't had a great start to the season, but you kind of have to have short memory in NASCAR DFS, and it's a new slate, it's a new Sunday, it's a new race, so don't mind Eric Jones at all. Josh Berry, I don't know what to do with Josh Berry. I don't know if his ownership was stupid low last weekend. He had a great race, so it'd be interesting to see if his ownership bumps up at all this weekend. I mean, he's definitely in good equipment, kind of starting mid-pack. He doesn't have the most experience in this car. So I'm definitely going to have some shares of Josh Berry, but I'm really curious to see what his ownership's going to be. I doubt it's going to be as low as it was last weekend, but I don't think it's going to be super high either. So he might be another low-owned option to sneak into your tournament lineups. Not going to get to Chris Buescher or Eric Almirola today, just based off where they start. Really, really like this 6K range. We got a lot of plays here that I think are going to be popular, but a lot of plays too that I think should make up a bulk of your lineup. Maybe try to get 2, 3 of these guys in a line, maybe even more, and then you try to sprinkle in some of these high and medium owned drivers who maybe start a little bit closer to the front of the field. Ryan Preece starts 24th. Again, hasn't had a great start to the season, but is in a good car, starts mid-pack. Don't know how much ownership he's going to carry. Really like Ryan Preece. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. won the Daytona 500. He's looking forward to these types of races. He knows these are the types of tracks that this team can take advantage of. These are the types of tracks that, they actually have a chance of winning on. So, really like Stenhouse. Probably going to be a little bit more popular just because he did win the Daytona 500, but nonetheless, should be a popular play. I don't think Austin Cindric's going to see much ownership. If you're trying to get extremely aggressive, maybe you can see him leading a bulk of this race and like finishing inside the top 10. Maybe that's enough, to do it for you. But starting second, that just carries way too much risk for me. Really like AJ Allmendinger starting 30th. He's going to be another core, popular option for cash games and for tournaments today. Justin Haley, don't mind him at all. Starts 20th, also in a colleague machine. But AJ is going to be much more popular than Justin Haley just because drivers or DFS players are just going to be looking at that starting position. Corey LaJoie should be stupid high owned as well. We almost saw him win this race last year before kind of getting involved in a late race wreck, trying to get or making a pass for the lead with Chase Elliott there, kind of got put in the wall and ended his day. So really, really bad qualifying run, but doesn't really matter too much to us. Starts deep in the field, in decent equipment, can easily, advance his position. Ty Gibbs, it's crazy to see Ty Gibbs priced this low, but he hasn't really been running that well. Did get in the wall in qualifying. That's why he starts so deep in the field. Going to be another popular play to build around. Michael McDowell, really not going to get to too much. Should be really low owned. So maybe, again, if you're looking for an aggressive tournament play, maybe you could sprinkle in 5% ownership to McDowell. Gregson's fine option if you land on him. Not really going to be over the field or under the field on Gregson. Burton should be another popular play. The equipment is definitely there. We just don't know if the talent of the driver is there. But starting 33rd, there's a lot of place differential upside versus place differential downside. And then everyone else, Todd Gilliland, Ty Dillon, Cody Ware, BJ McLeod, JJ Yaley. I don't mind these plays. I guess more specifically like the back markers, like it just kind of depends on if we see, when there's a caution, if we're getting 5, 6 cars at a time that are wrecking out, or if it's 1 to 2 cars at a time that are wrecking out. If we get 5 to 6 cars wrecking out at a time, those are really the races that Cody Ware, BJ McLeod, and JJ Yaley can take advantage of, because these cars are not going to be able to maintain with the lead pack. These laps click off extremely fast at Atlanta. So these drivers are going to go multiple laps down. And if we don't get wrecks until, like, we need wrecks throughout the bulk of this race. But if we are only seeing like a majority of wrecks at the very end of this race, they might be so far behind lap wise that they might not even have enough time to take advantage of those wrecks. I'm just a little hesitant to play Cody Ware, BJ McLeod, and JJ Yaley. I think they're all still going to be relatively low owned. So I don't mind them, but for me, any of these drivers on high, I'm going to try to be making up a bulk of my lineup and maybe sprinkling in a couple of medium, interest drivers. So hopefully that helps. Hope you guys have a good Atlanta race weekend. Hopefully it's a good DFS day for everybody. Yeah, should be it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'll post the spreadsheet up on Twitter, basically in the next 5 minutes, so you guys can have access to it. It's at Fast Cars FM. We're only like 30 followers or 20 something followers, maybe away from 1,000, so really close there. YouTube slowly, trying to keep up with Twitter. But thank you guys as always. Have a good Sunday. Enjoy the race. Best of luck watching the March Madness games, and we'll catch you next weekend.